integers that are important. It's important. Okay, so we're going to name these intervals. So these names, again, come from the previous slide. You've got a major tone, a minor tone, and a semitone. Okay, and then here are the frequencies. Oh, excuse me, here are the cents. I didn't do any frequencies. And then the key is C. It's a C major scale, right? So we can compute it if we use these little symbols. Major tone is 2 lines, minor tone is a thick and a thin, semitone is 1 thick. You can write it out as that, and the old handout shows that as well. That tells you how to construct the major scale. So instead of talking about whole, half, and that, which we talked about last week, you see it's major tone, minor tone, semitone. Okay. Now notice the ratio. If you look, the C to E to G, which is the unison to the major third to the perfect fifth, those are actually in the ratio of 4 to 5 to 6. Right? Because the perfect fifth is 3 halves, which is the same as 6 fourths, and that's 5 fourths, and that'd be 4 fourths. So, close enough. C, E, and G, F, A, and C, and G, B, and D all work out to be it. Those are the major chords in this key. Remember from last week? You have a major chord that starts on the tonic, starts on the fourth, and starts on the fifth. So again, we see this fundamental physical world thing coming back, that the major scale is a nice, simple ratio. Okay, so we only need 3 ratios. We talked about that. And there's actually kind of a mapping between what I talked about last week, the whole step and the half step. 2 notes is kind of a whole step, and 1 note is a half step. Although there are 2 different 2-line things, or excuse me, 2 lines is 2 notes difference, a whole step, and 1 line is 1 note difference. So some of it is still there, and we'll see that again when we get to. Okay, so now I'm just shifting to minor scale. Okay, so the minor, remember, is the same as the major, starting on the 6th of the major. So we're going to start on A, and we're going to compute the interval again. So it's the same interval that just moved around, and the same pattern just moved around. So now we have major tone, semitone, minor tone, major, semi, minor, and actually I think this is wrong. There should be a single line. It's correct down here. So this gives you the pattern for the minor scale. Now, if we look at the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th here, we get a minor chord instead of a major. We see that the ratio for the minor is 10 to 12 to 15. So it's not as small as the major. Typically, minor is not considered to sound as pleasing. It's a darker chord. But again, we use the same intervals, make up the same, to make up the whole scale. You only need 3 intervals. And again, 2 lines versus 1. Okay, so what's the problem with just intonation? It's nice and simple. You got to remember a bunch of ratios, but it's not that hard. You know, we can deal with this. What is the problem? The problem is if you use all these ratios, you have different note names within a key. For instance, the key of C has, of course, C and D. You see, I've labeled all the note names. I've included the flats and sharps because they're not the same. And we'll see that in a second. And so in the key of C, your C computes to 264 hertz, right? If you look at A equals 440, and you determine the ratio between A and C, you'll find that C equals 264 hertz. Okay, so you can compute everything based on A as long as A is in the key. Similarly in G, you can compute it, and it comes, you know, the ratio of C to A and the key to G is 264 hertz. Well, then we get to other keys like D flat, and you know the ratio for this key, and C is a different position in the scale, it uses a different ratio to compute it. It's 260.7 hertz. So C is not equal to C. It depends on which key you're in, which is one of the fundamental problems with just intonation. There's no way that you can have an instrument that can play in all the keys because the note you would need for C is different than all the keys. So if you had something like a violin or something that's continuous, you could adjust. Or you could just define a piano that's good for the key of C. I mean, harmonicas come in keys. It's a lot easier to carry a lot of harmonicas. So they needed a solution to that. Also, the other thing to note is the difference, like even in this example where, well, here C sharp, again, varies by key, 275, 278, and then B flat is also different. So one note can take on multiple values, and then the different, the things that we would normally consider enharmonics nowadays also take on different values. Everything is different back then. Okay. Now, I say here it's possible to complete the full table for all keys. That's your homework. Build this table. You've got all the note names on the side, and put all the keys in. So you've got 15 different keys. You've got, 8 different note names with a flat and a sharp, so 24 different notes. Build the table. And then actually, I didn't assign it, but I'd like a little description of, how bad it is. How many different frequencies are in an octave. Okay, so that's a problem. You can't build a piano to this. This is roughly around the time of Bach. They decided to come up with equal tempered pitch. Okay, and the Bach series of musical pieces called the well-tempered clavier. Well-tempered is another term for equal tempered. It means the same thing. So you could build a harpsichord that could play in any key. And this is nice because now, once you go to equal tempered, all the keys are equal. And if you have a problem where you have an instrument, or more likely a singer who has a certain physical range, you can play it in a different key. And everything adjusts accordingly. Whereas before you'd have to, all the notes would be slightly different. Things don't transpose because they would sound slightly different. With equal tempered, they all sound. But it's a bit of a fudge, and we'll see that. It's a nice formula. It's a fit. That it doesn't. Not everything is as nice as just temperament, though it works out a lot better mathematically. So again, another quote from Olson and Jeans. Temperament is the process of reducing the number of tones per octave by alternating the frequency. Okay, so what we want to do is, we've got something that looks like it could be 12 parts between an octave, but it comes out to be 30 when you do the math. So let's just force it to be 12. All right, let's define a series and say there are 12 steps between an octave. Okay, so that's our constraint. That at the 12th step, the ratio should be 2 to 1. Okay, so you've got the ratio from one to the next is f, and to the next, from the second to the first is f squared, the third is f and the third. So it's a ratio of f between any adjacent tones, and you're going to say f to the 12th equals 2. Well, then we solve for f. F is the 12th root of 2. Okay? So this is all you need to know about equal temperament. Everything is based on the 12th root of 2. Which unfortunately most pocket calculators don't have. You need to hear my son's great calculator. See. Okay, so we're going to talk about intervals and equal temperament. We divide the octave into 12 equal tempered half tones or half steps. We talked about half steps last week. Here we see them again. So each interval is a multiple of 12 root of 2. That's easy enough. 2 half steps or half tones equal 1 whole tone. Each half tone is exactly 100